Welcome back to Rooted and Restored. My name is Lisa Rowe. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I am honored to be here with my stepdaughter, Callie, as we walk through maybe what might be a unique podcast for us. Callie and I had an intimate conversation this morning that allowed for what I'm seeing as a breakthrough for her in some areas of her life. And rather than try to be inauthentic and move into the content that we had created for you today, we're just going to allow ourselves to have a conversation on air with our authentic selves being present, and also just naming something before we enter in, because I realize that this could be a very vulnerable space for you. We are clinicians and we practice this in and outside of our work. And so where we are today is a lot different than maybe where some of our listeners might be today as we negotiate this conversation. And so we might go pretty deep today, depending on how this goes. And also just naming too that Callie and I have a relationship that stems from a better part of a decade, and so there's a lot of emotional deposits that have been made, and so we have what I would say like a foundation to have a conversation like this, especially live, right? Mm-hmm. Or with people listening to us. So this isn't something I would recommend or that I would offer a client conversation out loud without their permission or without some sort of like real meaningful connection here like we're doing here. And then I also just want to set maybe another precedent that there's a real live situation taking place in Callie's life right now, and we're not going to touch that because that's still something she's walking through. But we've been able to name a root issue, and so today we're just going to kind of dissect that. I think Callie needs that space today, and we're going to see how it goes. So we're going to name this Getting to the Root of Our Limited Self-Trust. We're going to name it, we're going to get to the root of our low self-confidence. We're going to get to the root of how past choices maybe sometimes shape the fears of our current choices. And so without further ado, I'm going to just kind of turn it to you, Cal, and just ask a big question. Like, right, we're not going to talk about the current issue, but maybe just unpack those deeper connected moments for yourself as you're exploring this with me today.
Okay. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, good question. Well, maybe talk to me about what does it mean for you not to trust yourself?
Oh, I'm probably going to cry a lot. Maybe I won't, but we'll see. I feel like maybe growing up, like I didn't have a place to trust myself.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everybody else like made decisions, so like it was just like there. And then I think I watched like everybody else make really bad decisions. And I think I've always had like a fear of like ending up how like other people are in my life. Mm-hmm. Even though I have great role models and great figures, I've watched what hardships they've had and how much they've had to overcome to be on the other side, or I've had other people in my life that haven't gotten to the other side. So I think that a big fear for me is just failing like epically. So I think trusting myself is really hard. When I also don't like trust other people. And I think like trusting yourself, you have to be like okay when you make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And I think I preach it to my clients all the time that like failure's okay and you can choose to move forward through failure, and I know all those things, but sitting with myself sometimes like it's hard. And I think knowing like you can be a therapist and you can still go through a lot of junk, and we're imperfect humans walking through with like imperfect people too.
Absolutely.
So I think normalizing that too. Their therapist isn't perfect, mm-hmm. and they've walked through probably a lot of things that you are walking through, or you have walked through. So I think naming that too is really important. But yeah, so I think that's why it's really hard for me to trust myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just heard that like there's some maybe precedent on your life because of who you are in the world, and I think people can relate to that, right? Like I'm supposed to be a therapist, so what does that mean, right? To the world, like I should have it together because I'm helping other people.
Mm-hmm.
And to some degree, yes, you want to have your professional skills. You want to be able to be personally walking through balance, but it doesn't mean you're not human,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I think even like in school you learn like self disclosure is like horrible, like never to do it. And then I've learned sometimes like with the right clients, like holding that space for them to show them like, oh, I walked through something similar. Like especially with kids, they're like, oh, okay, she's not just another adult that's trying to like put me in line, or teach me right, or whatever that looks like for them. There's a little bit more like trust that creates in that space. So agreed.
Yeah. And in my experience, the more human I am and the more my life has evolved, the more I'm able to sit with clients in their spaces. So I just offer that to you today as we negotiate this, that just because society says it has to be this way doesn't mean you can't be human, and doesn't mean that this is destroying who you are. It's actually, in my opinion, allowing you to evolve and expand who you're able to reach, how you're able to connect to the world, and your authentic place that you provide for the clients that you serve. So just derailing that right now. Okay. So let's go back to what you had said. I heard the word fear come out, your fear of failing. Where has that shown up in your life outside of this current situation?
Oh my goodness. I think every big decision I make, buying a car, going to college, where I go to college, grad school, choosing to move home for grad school, picking friends, everything.
Yeah. Okay. And go back even further. Like, so it sounded like you kind of started at like 18 and all those decisions that kind of allowed for progress from there. Invite me into like maybe your 5, 7, 10, 12-year-old self. What were you fearful of then?
Getting in trouble. My parents like yelling at me or being explosive. Fear of like my parents finding out like what each other are doing because it was unhealthy. Because I'm a protector and I want to protect people and I don't want to hurt people or get people in trouble. Fear. What was gonna happen next? I feel like I was very much like on eggshells or like whiplash, like I didn't know what was gonna happen next or how people were gonna show up for me. Because some people weren't very consistent. Yeah.
Okay. So what does that tell you as you think about your fear of failure?
That other people in my life were unstable. I was unstable. So I'm fearful of like recreating that.
So if we created an equation, people of significance in my life were unstable, plus my instability equals failure. Notice that. What can you see?
Well, I feel like it's hard too because like I feel like I go to a place of maybe being unstable when like I hide things or like I don't talk about them and then they come up and then like I'm an emotional mess like right now. Because I've just been like marinating on it or thinking about it and stuffing it, which is what I do when I'm not in a healthy place because I want to avoid it. So that when it comes out, I feel like I'm just like chaotic, like I'm all over the place because I just stuffed something for like 5 days or longer, which is not healthy. Still working through it. Way better than I used to be. And then I feel like sometimes people are like outwardly unstable, but then I feel like sometimes you don't know until you know.
Okay, so does the equation then shift a little with what you just said? people's of significance is instability plus your stuffing
Mm-hmm.
equals feeling unstable.
Yeah, because I feel like I stuffed growing up because people were unstable. So, like, how can I express how I feel if there's no place for it? Or people don't allow for a place for it? Or, like, right, I do not do well getting, like, yelled at or screamed at or, like, told people are disappointed in me. So, like, I guess not that people have to cater how they present things to me, but when people don't take that into consideration and they're dealing with their own turmoil and they're, like, loud and chaotic, and that's what I receive, like, I pull back more. So I feel like that's what's, like, caused me to stuff, and, like, sometimes that doesn't happen, but, like, I feel like that's just consistently ingrained in my head. So, like, talking about things means that, like, something bad's gonna happen. Where, like, if I don't talk about it, then, like, it's fine, which isn't true, because it's fine until it's not fine, and then it goes. I know that, but
yeah, that's good stuff. People's instability plus your stuffing equals feeling unstable. Said another way, people's behaviors or dysfunctions, your survival mechanism as a child, right, provided you what?
Safety.
Perceived safety.
Yeah.
It was still unstable, but it was perceived safety because we were ignoring it. Right? So let's say that again. People's dysfunctional behavior plus your silence or stuffing, your survival mechanism, offered you a perceived sense of safety, but it was really what?
Dysfunction.
Yeah. Right. And so that's what we're talking about today, the root issues. Right? And the only way to dispel that root issue, right, because that lives inside of you as a real life experience, and it's informing your current today. How do you change this equation?
Talk about it.
Okay. So you're saying, like, you can't change people's dysfunction, right? You can't change people's behavior. Maybe it's not even dysfunctional. Maybe it's just offering you input, right? Plus, what needs to change for you?
That I express myself outwardly.
Right. Which will then offer you what?
Actual safety and stability.
Why?
Because I'm being honest. And then, like, the rug's not going to get pulled out from under me because... Oh! Sorry. The rug's not going to get pulled out from under me just because I, like, let something, like, stack and stack and stack and stack until it's, like, a huge explosion. I do it little bit by little bit.
Yeah, right. And so if we look at this equation, like, you are a part of the outcome, but you can't control these two other variables, right? Like, somebody else's dysfunction or behavior, and then the outcome, because it's relying on somebody else. You have this one part of you that was shaped by survival to stuff, but now you're offering yourself new insight to say, actually, that doesn't give me what I really need. What could we look at today to help you grow through this season of life?
I feel like from you saying that, though, like, I think I also just recognize that I'm also, like, doing a disservice to, like, other people by doing that. Because, but then I also feel like I'm not setting up other people up for success because, and, like, being present for me because I don't allow them to show me, like, anything any differently. So, like, right, like, you just asked me a question this morning. And it had nothing to do with you, so it's not a big deal. But, like, I was just like, and you're like, whoa, where did this come from? But, like, if the problem was with you, you would have been like, I had no idea you were feeling like this. I know I do that. I know I do that. Yeah. But I'm also naming it, too, now that, like, that's also hurting other people just as much as it's, like, hurting me. And I don't like hurting other people, so.
Wow. So not only is it hurting you, but you're seeing now that there's like a systemic effect,
Mm-hmm.
that it has impact on other people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Yeah. So unpack that more. If we look at people are going to be people, we can't control them, right? It could be healthy behavior, it could be unhealthy behavior, it could be, I don't know, benign behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Plus you not offering yourself survival mode or mechanisms of silence or stuffing. You offer yourself that ability to be vulnerable and authentic, right? Which offers, right, an actual like space for you to feel safe. You might not like what happens, you might not feel good about it, but you're going to know, right? It's not going to be left kind of underneath the rug like you said before. Mm-hmm. So offer yourself that space to explore that today. What would it take as you're continuing to grow to maybe break up with that old equation and really like align with this space and place that you're offering yourself right now?
I feel like I just have to do it.
Ah.
Like, I feel like there's nothing that I can really change. Like, I think I have awareness of a lot of this stuff, but I think today, like, really, really naming it and seeing, like, how it really does, like, affect everything I do. Like, I just have to do it, even though it sucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what would it take to change it from I have to do it to I get to do it?
I don't think it's fun, so I feel like there's part of me that doesn't want to say I get to do it, but I guess, like, going into a place of, like, I am grateful that, like, I do have self-awareness of stuff, and that I do have the ability to learn some of these things now, instead of learning them when I'm 35 or 40. Mm-hmm. Like you had said that, like, you didn't do this when you were my age, so, mm-hmm. like, I am grateful that I do have space within you and, like, other people in my life to be able to, like, have the hard conversations, even if in the moment I hate them and they're the worst thing in the entire universe, to be able to help me grow, because if not, I would stay in the same space, mm-hmm. and that equation wouldn't have any ability to change or have any awareness for it, or I know it's there, but I leave it because it's protected me at one point, so it's really hard to let it go. Mm-hmm. Because even if you can name it's dysfunctional, it's protected me in my mind for so long. So I think naturally I'll always revert back to that. So being able to have the awareness to say, like, wait, you're going to this space, it's not healthy, what can you do differently? It might be really, really hard to do it, and the outcome might really, really suck, because you can't control other people. But it's learning to be, like, authentic with yourself, so that you're happy with yourself, or you don't hate yourself.
Yeah. It offers you a growth mindset, right? If you are aware, right, you can't unaware, can't unlearn something, right? We can pretend or, like, put a blinder up to it, but once you're aware of something, now there's an offering to do something about it. And that's what we do with our clients, right? Is that, like, sometimes it's outside of our awareness. Maybe there was a part of you that understood this equation, but it felt like you just had an aha moment when you said, actually, maybe I understood it here, but I didn't understand that actually the way I'm showing up inauthentically is hurting other people, right? So not only is it hurting yourself, it's hurting those that you care about. That is awareness, right? And now that you know that, it takes you to a whole nother level of healing. You can't unaware. You can't, right? And so it offers you this place to say, I know what the equation looks like if I continue doing my old behavior. I don't have complete clarity of what this looks like if I change my behavior, but I don't want to go back to this. This didn't serve me. This has caused me a lot of pain. This has caused me a lot of complications. This has caused me tons and tons of, like, really hard work in therapy and this sort of thing. What could be available if I said I get to do this? So yeah, some part of us has to say, like, yeah, I have to do this because I want to grow. But then the other part of it is what? Different. So I get to bring the tool that I was going to bring for our real podcast.
Great.
So I saw this the other day from John Maxwell, and I thought it was really important, and I think it's like invaluable. This is a rubber band. What's the job of a rubber band, Cal?
I'm thinking of a hair tie. It's to hold hair together, but I guess with anything, it's supposed to hold things together.
Yeah, and how does it do its job?
It stretches or like expands and then goes back.
So a rubber band is created. That's when it's doing its job, when it's expanding, right? It's not doing its job when it's like this. It doesn't hold anything together, right? I mean, it's when it's doing its job, to your point, it's holding hair, it's holding paper, it's holding whatever together. So if we think about that as it pertains to your opportunity for growth here, right? And this like have to versus get to mentality. How can we apply the metaphor of the rubber band to your circumstances?
I guess if I'm like hiding or stuffing how I feel, I'm limp like that. But then if I'm communicating and expressing how I feel, I'm putting the work in. So then it's expanding.
Yeah, and as we look at expansion, right? Like this rubber band can only hold maybe whatever it can hold, right? But like when I open it and stretch it, look at how much more capacity it has. Right?
What if it breaks?
Interesting. What if it does?
That's really bad. I don't want to break.
Notice that. Notice. Where did your mind just go right there?
I don't know. I feel like things have broken me before and they've come back. It's really hard. And I don't want to keep breaking. But I know that like you break, you grow, and you evolve. That's really scary. And it's hard. And I just feel like I want like consistency. I don't want all of this. Which I think is why it's like really hard for me to say like yes to things when they're like hard or scary, like with work or different things, because then it can go like this. And I don't like that.
And informing yourself, why don't you like that?
That's what it felt like growing up.
Yeah.
But life can't just go like this.
Why not?
Because in order to have like high highs, you have to experience low lows. I feel like maybe you get bored and things would become stagnant. I feel like to me that doesn't sound bad, but I feel like outward looking in, people say that's bad for things to just always be like normal. Maybe that's not part of life. It's not practical.
Yeah, not in our humanity. We desire to grow, to evolve, right? It's why, look at how we go through school, right? We would just read the same book all 12 years in elementary, middle, and high school, right? If we didn't desire to get better and grow and evolve in our humanity, right? As you apply that kind of understanding, what if you read the book the same every single year? What if you read I Love to Jump in 12th grade after you read it in kindergarten and for all 13 years? What would happen?
You get bored.
And what else?
You wouldn't grow.
No. Would you even know what your potential was?
No.
Would you even understand what like your purpose is?
No.
How do we find those things?
Failing.
How else?
Trying new things. I mean, doesn't necessarily mean when you try something new that you're going to fail at it. You can do really good and, like, thrive through it. So.
Yeah. So, let's apply what you just said. Oftentimes, whenever I bought flowers, the rubber band is around the bottom of it. And if I leave the rubber band on, what happens to those flowers?
They stay together.
Yeah. Right. And when they stay together, what do they look like in the vase?
Good.
Okay. Sometimes.
Or, like, well, I guess you can't rearrange them. Like, they come with how they, like, are sold. So you can't move anything around if you want to.
Yeah. Okay. So stay with. So you can't rearrange it.
Okay.
They stay together the way somebody else put it together. And that rubber band is held really tight. Okay. So if we want to go with that theory that what if it breaks, what happens when you break the rubber band and allow the flowers to come apart?
You have the opportunity to, like, rearrange them.
So even if this sucker breaks, what's possible?
You can choose to, like, rearrange stuff the way that you want to. Or it doesn't. You still have the flowers. You still have the vase. You still have the water. You just have to. It just looks different.
So, we can stay like this. We can expand. And if it breaks, there still seems to be possibility. But the reality is, this mentality requires emotional maturity, right? In your survival as a young person, you didn't know how to do this, or did you have the capacity to do this because you were in constant survival and you were young. This would have meant talking out. This would have meant speaking up for yourself. This would have meant crying. This would have meant asking for your needs to be met, when in your circumstances might not have made any, it might have made it more difficult for you. It might have made it more dangerous. It might have made it more unsafe. And so you adapted to this mentality. This takes emotional maturity, right? As you're developing into this. And who taught you how to do this?
You.
Right. Right. And how much practice would you say you've actually had with it?
A handful of, like, hard events. But, like, in the span of my 25 years of life, like, not as much as, like, somebody that was taught it, like, in childhood.
Right. It didn't have to go through survival like this, right? Like, there are 3-year-olds that are learning to do this right now, right? There are 5-year-olds that are learning to do this right now. And the band is bound to break, and they have the ability, with their resiliency, with their tools, with their support system, to negotiate new levels of expansion, finding new rubber bands or something totally different, rearrange it all together. Yeah. And so this is a part of you, and I want to just name it. How old is this part of you that's coming out today?
I don't know.
Is it 25?
No. Probably 10 or younger.
Yeah. And so just naming that too, that when we look at parts work, we realize that at times we get frozen in that place and we basically marry or align ourselves with that mentality, and we freeze, quite literally. And today you're like opening the freezer door and allowing yourself to defrost.
I don't understand. So, like, with the flowers, right? I rather it come tied so I don't have to rearrange it, right? But then that also is very contradicting if I don't trust other people. Does that just mean I don't trust myself more than I don't trust other people? Even though I don't want to trust other people?
Okay, so to your point, if we stay with the metaphor of the flowers, what I hear you saying is that you liked that somebody else rearranged them for you or prearranged them for you, and you'd rather keep their style of flowers and just stick it in the vase when it comes home. Fair. What if they don't fit in the vase?
Well, then I would have to. But I feel like they're an expert at what they do. And I'm not an expert at that. So I feel like let them like do what they know how to do with it. But I guess if we take that out of the metaphor, if I let everything else in my life be in like other people's courts and make decisions, they're not experts in it.
Yeah, and to your point, there's going to be a doctor that suggests something and they went to school and they've studied and they have insights and wisdom. Is it important to lean into them? Yes, but I would still encourage anyone listening, myself included, that when that information hits your heart and your ears, that you still would take it in and allow yourself to process that information and say, does that match with where I'm at right now? Does that align with who I want to be? Is surgery the best option for me right now? Should I get a second opinion? Allowing yourself to walk through that discernment process, because you are your best friend. You are the best advocate for yourself. You are the person that knows yourself better than anybody else. And what if I told you that a 13-year-old put those arrangements together at Publix? What would you say?
You did a really good job with it.
Yes. Yes. But would you call them an expert?
No.
No, they just know how to like listen to directions and put something together that you buy for $30.
But then it's weird that I'm like giving other people so much power if I don't trust people. Doesn't make sense.
We go back to that equation. People's dysfunction required a reaction from you that led to that instability. You have constantly been looking at people your whole life, right? And your actions were a reaction to their action. Did I say that right? Your reaction was to their action. So that means you've been giving other people power your whole life.
I have power.
What is that?
I have power.
And how do you find that? How do you expand? How do you use that?
Trust in myself. But that's really hard.
Yeah. But if we're looking at that 3-year-old who is learning to dance for the first time, and they go to their first dance class and they ask them to stand on one leg, and this is really new motor development for them, and they do it, what happens?
People cheer for them, or they're really excited, or they're really happy about it.
And what's that little 3-year-old likely to do again?
Try it again.
Yeah. That's how trust is built within ourselves. Taking those risks, taking those chances, not stuffing and sitting in silence, but allowing ourselves to express ourselves, to take the next step, to continue expanding even when it doesn't feel natural, right? Because tomorrow you'll be able to stand on one leg because you just did it at dance practice. That maybe the flower arrangement that you do is more beautiful than anything you've ever seen. Or it matches the vase or the room arrangement or whatever. You're thinking.
No, it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I hear it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the metaphors all align.
Mm-hmm.
Just putting it into action.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. With that get-to mentality. Like, I get to do this so I don't stay the same. So that I can break up with these old patterns. So I don't let other people control me anymore. So that when I am 35, I have an ability inside of myself that I never thought I'd ever have. And I might make mistakes along the way. But maybe the offering today is that mistakes are better than doing nothing.
Staying silent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe as we begin to close, which by the way, thank you for allowing us into your space today, maybe just offering, like, the beginning of this conversation, you were really, coming off of a conversation with me, and now we've kind of broken this down a little bit, gotten to the roots, maybe offered ourselves some understanding. Maybe, like, just allow us, like, into, like, where are you now, having started with pretty emotion, and, like, what are you going to take away with you?
I think taking away that I have power and I have the ability to make decisions in my life, even if they're really hard, and I get to be able to make decisions. And it's okay to fail, or it's okay to try something new, and it might turn out really well, or it might not, but it's the ability to be able to grow through those experiences. And hiding myself or hiding how I feel and not being vocal doesn't protect me. It's a defense mechanism. Childhood wounds. It's always going to be there, but learning to be aware of it and trying to steer clear of it is really important. Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, your eyes look a lot less glazy and this sort of thing. Where are you at right now as you get ready to wrap up this recording?
I don't feel like I'm gonna cry again.
Okay.
That's good. I feel like I got a lot of it out. I think for me personally, I know, like, I needed to talk about this. Like, I've been trying to get into my therapist for 3 days, and I was supposed to see her on Thursday. But I knew it was something that I needed to talk about. Did I do it right when I needed to talk about it? No. I let it sit, and I stuffed it until I got to a place where I was like, oh, like, my foot was tapping, like, I need to talk about it now. But then when you get to that place, your urgency isn't other people's urgencies. So I know that I needed to talk about it. So, like, I'm glad it came out today the way it did, and it happened in the kitchen, because it was a release for me, and it was really good, and you were able to, like, hold space for me. And today wasn't what we expected it to be, but I do think it's fruitful, and I do think it's important for other people to see what we walk through, and also if they're walking through something similar, just offering that vulnerability to people.
Yeah, and offering that lived experience to your younger self. If your 10-year-old self was tapping your foot and holding on to this and going into silence or stuffing, right? Noticing. Use the word release that your 25-year-old self gets to use today, and inviting that 10-year-old version of you, perhaps just reaching back and grabbing her and saying, hey, look, it actually was okay, right? It actually feels better to live in this place. I feel relief, right? I feel less tense. I feel like I'm not holding all of this stuff that doesn't need to be held. I asked for my needs, and I got my needs met.
I guess, and to add to that, like, it does feel good to get to release it, which, like, when I was younger, like, there was no release, or, like, maybe I'd cry about it, and that felt like a release to me, but there wasn't any space to talk about it.
Right.
So getting to be able to do that does feel really empowering, and it does feel really good.
Getting to. Yeah. I think, girlfriend, this is offered to you today. Yeah, expansion. Congratulations.
Thank you for getting me here.
You're welcome. Way to go.
Yeah.
Awesome.